Hello and welcome back to my studio, where this week I was working on a recipe for banh mi. But before I show you how I make my banh mi from now on, let's do a flash history of one of the brightest stars in the sandwich galaxy. The story of the banh mi goes back to the 1860s, when the French capture Vietnam and turn it into a colony. And obviously they start introducing all sorts of things to the country by force. Among those things are foods such as coffee, milk, charcuterie, or, of course, the French baguette. But while locals might have been producing them, the foods themselves were pretty much reserved for the French ruling class. What Vietnamese people themselves were eating didn't really change very much at all. Only about half a century in, things slowly began to change. A few wealthier Vietnamese people started enjoying Western-style bread, or banh mi as it was called. That's roughly what it translates to. However, they were eating it French-style, meaning butter with cheese or ham, pâté, cold cuts, that type of stuff. But when French rule ended in 1954, something interesting happened. Not only did things like bread finally start getting more accessible to the masses, more importantly, nobody was telling Vietnamese people what to do or what to eat anymore. And naturally, they would start taking liberties. And that's how, according to legend, in the 1950s, in the city of Saigon, one small family-run restaurant starts putting things like Vietnamese pickles, Vietnamese meats, mayo, and herbs into their sandwich, and thus kicking off a true food craze that lasts pretty much until today. Banh mi are famous for a super thin and crackly crust and a pillowy, soft, fluffy interior. And there's this myth that apparently adding rice flour is the secret. Now that sounds very cool and exciting, and I can actually not tell you what they used back in the 50s originally, but what I can tell you after a lot of research and experimentation is that rice flour is most likely not the secret here. It's much rather about a number of industrial dough enhancers. Things like amylase, glucose oxidase, hemicellulase, or most shockingly, vitamin C powder. Now that last one is the only one we should be able to find around the world, so I tried baking a couple of short baguette-style loaves with it. And you know what? It worked well. My baguettes came out a bit fluffier than usual, tasted great, and had a super thin and crispy crust, at least for the first few hours after baking. So I figured that will become the banh mi bread recipe I will share with you guys in this video. And however, the other day when I was walking to the studio, I grabbed a very regular German-style breakfast roll with egg and cheese from the bakery around the corner, and as I bit into it, I realized that the bread they were using was every bit as good as the one I was making myself. And therefore, my official recommendation is don't bother baking banh mi bread yourself. Instead, find whatever plain, simple, yeasted baguette or hoagie style bread you can find. For me, that's this classic German style breakfast roll. It might be a bit small, but that's okay. The real secret here is getting a freshly baked one, you know, that's like less than half a day old before it gets stale. But even if it does, just pop it back into the oven for a couple of minutes and it's gonna come out almost like it's freshly baked. Check out this bread roll I got yesterday. It was stale, but after a couple of minutes in the oven, don't tell me that is not a perfectly crackly and fluffy bread. Now that we have the bread part sorted, let's talk about protein. From pâté to cold cuts to Vietnamese meatballs and sausage, there are more options that I could ever list. But since one of my favorite things in Vietnamese cuisine is lemongrass pork chops, here's what I decided to do. First, I grabbed a few pork neck steaks and salted them generously. You want to let them sit and dry brine for at least an hour, and then all you gotta do is sear them on high heat until they're cooked through. Now, a lot of people like marinating meats a lot, and in a barbecue type of situation, I would definitely have done that, but when you're pan searing, your marinade is probably just gonna burn before your meat cooks through. So instead, I just made a quick flavor-based paste by pounding lemongrass, shallots, sugar, and salt together, and then I mixed that with my seared and chopped up meat. This way, you'll get your perfectly crisp meat and all the flavor. Now let's talk about what is probably my favorite part of a banh mi, and that is the iconic Vietnamese carrot and daikon pickles. Although, you know what? In the spirit of keeping things local, I actually used kohlrabi instead of daikon radish, and it worked like a charm. You first want to slice your veggies into matchsticks. Ideally use a mandolin, but don't use a grater, it's quite the difference. Then I just drop some crushed garlic, a little ginger, quite a lot of sugar, and a bit of salt into a container, add hot water and mix to dissolve. Then we're adding our veggies and topping it off with rice vinegar or any other type of white vinegar. After as little as 30 minutes, your super juicy, sweet and sour, crunchy pickles will be done. And let me tell you, these guys literally taste better than candy to me, and they go well with so many things. So yeah, from now on, I'm literally always gonna have them in the fridge. Now remember how I said that back in the day, even in Vietnam, baguettes were always eaten French style, meaning with butter. These days, however, some form of mayo is probably more common. So far so good, but there are two things we should definitely mention here. First of all, it is actually not uncommon to find a mix of both mayo and butter being used in banh mi. And secondly, in many parts of Asia, including Vietnam, the egg flavor in mayonnaise is actually a lot more pronounced. So what do? Well, we pimp our mayo. First of all, in a little food processor, I combine mayo, room temperature butter, an extra boiled egg, and a pinch of MSG. Give everything a rough blitz for a few minutes until mostly smooth, and you will be left with an absolutely ridiculous spread that honestly tastes and feels quite weird. But on a banh mi, it just magically works. It's not butter, it's not mayo, it's the best of both worlds. Before we put together our banh mi, may I quickly mention my cookbook kitchen passport. If you like unconventional takes at some of my favorite dishes from around the world, pretty much like this video, I think you would enjoy the 85 recipes in this book. Now, let's make our banh mi. So, as we established, just a freshly baked or reheated hoagie style roll is gonna be your base, but it might need some special treatment. I like to not slice it in half evenly, but instead sort of just cut off a lid, if that makes any sense. So we get one almost full bread roll, which we can then hollow out. That is quite the important step, and you don't have to throw the fluff away. It actually makes for great breadcrumbs after drying, but we really need the space here. First, let's spread some of our butter mayo on our bread roll. Then you can optionally go for a leaf or two of lettuce if you like. After that, we stuff our banh mi with the chopped lemongrass pork, a little pile of our pickles, and very importantly, some fresh cilantro, kind of essential, as well as a few shavings of cucumber. I just used the veggie peeler to get them nice and thin. Last but not least, like most types of sub or hoagie, wrapping your banh mi in first sandwich paper, then aluminum foil, then followed by a solid squishing will help make everything come together and feel as one. And even though we cut quite a few corners, I am very happy with the results. I really hope you give this one a try. If you do, definitely let me know how you liked it. Thank you for watching, and I'm gonna see you in the next video.